Hi there, I'm Brad, and welcome to another one of my online videos for my Music Humanities class. In this video and the next one, we're going to be talking about Impressionism, which was a movement that was rooted in France, based in France in the late 19th century. And the story is, French composers were kind of looking around, and they were noticing all the nationalistic musics of, say, the Russian Five and Edvard Grieg, and even Chopin bringing his Polish roots into Paris earlier in the century. And they said, we want to create some French music. At the same time, again, they're at the end of the 19th century, and they're kind of like dealing with the aftermath of Wagner's infamous Tristan chord and the breakdown of the tonal system. They're casting about for new forms. They're wanting to create, new ways of expressing their music. And the guy that put it all together was a composer named Claude Debussy. Okay, and he was born in 1862 and died in 1918. Born in a suburb of Paris called Saint-Germain-en-Laye. His family soon moved to Paris. His father sold china. He was a crockery merchant, and his mother was a seamstress. And shortly after they moved to Paris, they actually moved to Caen to get away from the problems with the Franco-Prussian War that was happening. And that's where Debussy took his first piano lessons. He had kind of a prodigious young musical talent. And they moved back to Paris when he was about 10 years old, and he was admitted to the Paris Conservatoire at age 10. Okay, so he was kind of precocious. Conservatoire. Okay. And he started out being a pianist, and soon kind of grew tired of just, having to practice scales. He was a composer, and he switched to composition, despite the fact that the faculty at the Paris Conservatoire was very conservative. And obviously Debussy, being young and French, wanting to forge his way in the world, was not. And in fact, he had kind of a reputation for being very argumentative. Didn't quite get along with many of the faculty, but, they supported him. And in fact, he was at the Paris Conservatoire for 11 years. And after that time, when he got his eventual degree, he won a thing called the Prix de Rome, which gave him 2 years to spend just composing in Rome. So he went down there and he was thinking about, what kind of music he could do. He's a French composer. And believe it or not, he actually liked Wagner. He thought, he had some really interesting things to say. But there were two problems with the music of Wagner. It was German, and it was German. Okay, the first one is obvious because he's French. The second one I say kind of semi-facetiously. But I'm using German as kind of a stand-in for what was happening in music. Wagner had taken the German tradition, the Viennese, Southern, Deutschland tradition, and pretty much broke it. Again, that dissolution of tonality. So Debussy was saying, what can I do? I can't really follow up on this. I need to find something new. He was kind of an avant-garde composer at the time. And three things happened that gave him the path forward. Okay, first of all, he encountered symbolist poetry, and the poet that most impressed him was the guy that was kind of the founder of the symbolist movement, Stefan Mallarmé, and was quite taken with the beauty of just the imagery of it, and the fact that it wasn't really making a bold statement, say like German stuff might or something. So that was the first thing. The other thing is that he began to encounter the impressionist art of famous artists now who were avant-garde at the time, people like Claude Monet. Mallarmé actually ran a kind of a salon where they all kind of hung out, and Debussy knew Monet. I should mention that Debussy hated the fact that people called his music impressionist, but he was certainly part of this whole ferment, this whole scene that was happening there. Okay, and then the final thing that happened that kind of gave him a way forward was that he went to the 1889, Exposition Universelle, in Paris. which was kind of like, bringing stuff from all over the world to show how great France was and things like that. And he encountered there music from Java, Javanese gamelan music. Oops. And was just amazed by it for a couple of reasons. First of all, it had a radically different scale because they were using a radically different tuning system based on their clangorous instruments. I'm going to play you a little bit in a second here. And they also had a very different sense of form. It was very open-ended in a way. It didn't have a theme and variations. It didn't do any of the kind of, old counterpoint stuff or anything like that. Instead, it just kind of spun itself out. Let me play you a little bit. Okay, this is actually a recording of a Javanese gamelan piece, and it sounds like this. So you can hear all the things that I'm talking about. I have an example of this music on my website. I encourage you to check it out because it's just incredible music. And it had a lot of influence in the 20th century, as we'll see, too. But anyhow, Debussy was just fascinated by this. But of course, he realized he couldn't write Javanese gamelan music. He was not a Javanese gamelan kind of guy. He was, steeped in the Western classical tradition. And he began to cast about for kind of how can he duplicate this sense of scale and form within the Western classical tradition. And he started fooling around with different kinds of musical scales. And he came up with one that sort of satisfied his needs. Now, I want to give you a little bit of a demonstration of what that is, okay? We're very familiar with the major scale, for example. But there's something weird about it. If you look at the scale, between those two notes, there's no intervening notes like there are on the chromatic scale, like there. And between the penultimate and final note, there's also no note between them. To create a major scale, it's sort of asymmetric. And we actually have a formula. When you do two notes like that, it's called a whole step. So the major scale is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, and then a half step. And the asymmetry of this makes these two notes kind of like unstable in a way. Like if I play them together, they want to go here. And that's the basis of the cadential formula that we talked about in Western classical music. Those two notes, they're called leading tones sometimes, in music theory circles. But what Debussy thought was, what if I created a different kind of scale that only had whole steps? And that scale sounds like this. And it's a really interesting scale because it's completely symmetrical. In fact, you can start anywhere in the scale and it's still the same whole tone scale. So, Debussy thought, this is a pretty cool scale. Also, you can do all kinds of weird modulations with it. If you transfer out of the whole tone scale to something, you can go from here, say. That's one modulation from that. You can also do this, which winds you in a completely different part of the major scale world. So this kind of symmetrical scale seemed to fit what Debussy was after. It also had that kind of dreamy quality, that sound to it. Welcome to dream time. Yeah. So Debussy said, this is it. So he's got the intellectual foundation behind what he wanted to do. He's got the artistic, aesthetic foundation behind what he wanted to do. And now he's got the musical tools to do what he wanted to do. And he started writing just incredible pieces with this. In fact, one of the ones he's most known for is called the Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, okay? Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. And it's based on a poem by Stéphane Mallarmé of the same name. And I mean, Debussy, come on. If you don't want to be known as an impressionist, don't name your piece Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. I mean, good grief. But it is a gorgeous piece of music. And in fact, I'll play the beginning, and what you're going to hear is a flute. And that flute is going to be playing the whole tone scale. Here we go. This is what it sounds like. So you can hear Debussy is just kind of letting it float. He's taking his time with this music, and just, the whole tone scale allows him to just kind of create these modulations that don't really cadence. They kind of do, and they leave you floating there. Very impressionistic, I might say. But this was just really wonderful music and very well suited to the French temperament, I think. So this kind of fulfilled that goal of creating a purely French music. And again, this is not like anything else that you're hearing in the world. So Debussy became pretty well known for this. And he followed it through. He was a very talented and gifted composer. We still study his harmonies today, like with Chopin, because he had an understanding of kind of the innate psychology of how harmony worked. And again, the modulations, this is another one of his famous pieces. It's a piano piece called Clair de Lune, or Moonlight. And I'm going to stop it after this just really amazing modulation. But here we go. That's it right there. That chord, it just comes out of nowhere. And then he picks it up and continues with it. I let that go just because that's such a beautiful piece. It has that kind of major and at the same time minor. It's like a sweet melancholy. This is deeply passionate music, but it's not the clashy passion of Rimsky-Korsakov or Mussorgsky or anybody like that. This is a very restrained, refined passion. And again, yeah, it's impressionistic music. Debussy hated it, but if you're going to eschew the term impressionism, don't write a piece as part of your nocturnes that you call nuages or clouds. We'll end with this. Yeah, you're just kind of floating out there. It's just wonderfully elegant and beautiful music. So we're going to continue next time talking about Impressionism with a couple of other composers. But for now, we'll say goodbye.